Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In this week's episode, something that I'm sure we've all gone through at some point or another. Let's talk about the reasons why your motorcycle isn't starting. Stay tuned. So then, this is my bike. She's a Yamaha FZ1 Naked. She's 1000 cc's, and I too have suffered when I've turned the key in the morning and there has been nothing. So let's take a closer look at the bike and have a little look at what things could be wrong with it. So the scenario can be anything really. You may have had an off, you might have dropped the bike accidentally, you may have knocked something, you may have just washed it, or it's been idle for a long time. Let's keep the motorcycle side of it nice and simple. What we need is a spark, we need compression, we need a bang, and we need exhaust. So if we concentrate on the list in that order, then I'm sure we should find something that isn't quite right and get it to fire up. So first things first then, ask yourself this question: when was the last time the bike functioned properly? That could give you some indication as to what is wrong with it. So as you can see, this is the key. Not teaching you to suck eggs, but some newer riders may have keyless start. This is an older machine obviously, and we also have here the electric cut-off. Now if we turn on the ignition, we can see that the bike runs up, but we didn't hear the fuel pump activating. So we do have electric this side. If I press the ignition, nothing is happening. For the purposes of this, we're going to say that we need to carry out other checks to make sure that it's nothing else. So let's now switch off the bike and ensure that the battery has continuity and it's still connected. So in order to check the continuity of the battery, we're going to need to get under the seat. So we'll use the key and slide it into the seat lock. And on this particular bike, the rear seat comes off first. Just pop that out the way. This then gives you access to a mechanism under the bike, which you slide over, and then it exposes the battery inside. So what you'll notice here is the main fuse here, and the battery, which is a good quality one. It's still fairly new. Let's take a closer look at the terminals. So what are we looking for in here then? We're looking at the main fuse specifically, we're looking at the positive terminal and also the negative terminal. We're looking for any signs of water ingress and or corrosion. Just as a visual inspection, I can see that everything's all right, but don't be afraid to take the main fuse out, inspect it closely and replace where necessary. Equally with your terminals, negative and positive, make sure that they are completely connected and they're not being disrupted by anything. Once we've checked that and we're satisfied that everything's in order with the battery, we can replace the seat. Imagine if the battery wasn't good, we can put a voltmeter on that and we can check the voltage of it. If it's falling below, then I would recommend changing the battery, as that's likely to be the issue. Okay, then we've checked the battery. Let's say, for argument's sake, your bike has been knocked over or you've had an off. Most bikes will have some form of tilt switch, and that can be activated. They're normally resettable, and once the bike is upright, it should in theory cut off. However, if I just pull the wiring loom back here, I'm pointing to my specific tilt switch, you'll notice it says up and is facing in the upwards direction. This is another area that, due to age of your bike, it could be that this is a faulty unit and something worth checking out. Even if it's for peace of mind, you can whip this switch out, check the continuity and then replace it. Once you have done that, it's also advisable to use your key in the ignition and turn your ignition on at least 3 to 5 times without actually starting the bike. This should correct the tilt switch. Okay then, the next area of concern is just here. This is the kickstand switch and also can be damaged if your bike has been turned over or been involved in an accident. The parts in here are very delicate. It's not a very pricey component and can be easily replaced. So this is another area which I would check next. If the functionality of the kickstand is working and there appears to be no damage, I would imagine that this switch is okay. But for the sake of trying, I would replace it, as it's not that expensive. Okay, on this particular bike, the engine is located behind the radiator. The spark plugs can only be accessed this way. They can't be accessed by removing the tank. It's kind of a fiddly job, to be perfectly honest with you. However, you can check the spark plugs by removing the radiator, pushing it down more towards the floor and then taking each spark plug out. What we're looking for here is that the spark plugs are clean and there's no signs of corrosion. If there are signs of corrosion, then I would imagine it's time to change those spark plugs. You can clean them and see if it rectifies the issue. However, my advice would be to replace the spark plugs. Hi there guys, so you join me back in the garage and we're just going to take a look at the spark plugs a little bit closer. I'm going to start by putting some gloves on. Don't particularly want oil all over myself. So this is the old set that I took out quite a few months ago now. I still haven't got round to dropping them off. So they weren't particularly bad, but as I bring it in close, you'll see that this spark plug in and of itself isn't too bad. Not too much coking up down at the contacts here. The ceramic is, you know, completely fine. That spark plug was probably okay. In contrast, if we look at this spark plug, you'll probably see that it's coked up quite badly. Now it could be cleaned, but for the sake of the cost and the peace of mind, I think it's just worth replacing them. As you can see, the ceramic is still intact as well, no chips. In terms of this one then, if you look a little bit closer, you'll see that there's corrosion just here. That's evidence of water getting down in towards the spark plug, which is no good. So that's the spark plugs then. Relatively easy in most bikes to replace, and I suggest doing that with every service that you do. If you're not sure, look in your service book to see when the last time that was done. So the next thing to check then, guys, is your oil. My window is empty at the moment, and that's simply because she's on the side and I rode in here to do this video. But what we're looking for here is telltale signs of water ingress. That can happen for a number of reasons. Head gasket issues, potentially water has managed to find its way in to the oil and mixed and has caused some of that mayonnaise-y kind of consistency. At this stage, if you see that residue, it may not be necessary to panic. In fact, I would suggest that you don't panic. You've confirmed that there's maybe an issue here. Take off your oil filler cap and inspect it. As you can see from mine, there's no sign of mayonnaise whatsoever, and there's no sign of mayonnaise anywhere around the inside of the filler cap. So I'm satisfied that there's no water ingress. However, if you think that there is, drop your oil. Okay then, as we look closer and we inspect our oil, we've dropped the oil down into an oil pan, and we've also taken off our filter, which is here. We're going to smell the oil, and we're going to smell for signs of any petrol contamination, any antifreeze, and we're going to look, as I pour it away, for any signs of water. Might not be obvious, but as I do pour that away, what is obvious is that oil needed changing. So that's a good thing. Keeping on top of your maintenance is really, really important. And as we're changing the spark plugs and dropping the oil, it also means that the bike is going to be nice and fresh, ready for your next ride. If it ran a couple of days ago, or even the day before it didn't start, chances are there's not a major issue. So then, in terms of your exhaust system, visually inspect your exhaust. If you're washing your bike, ensure that the exit port is blocked so that water isn't going backwards into the exhaust, because that can find its way into the engine. Also check each and every point to ensure that the exhaust is mounted properly and no escape gases are exiting the bike. So that's the checks complete. Let's run down the list. We've checked our electric, we've checked our terminals to the battery, we've checked the tilt switch in the back. On this bike it's here. We've checked the kickstand switch, that seems operable and functional. We've also checked the spark plugs. We've checked the oil and we've dropped where we've needed to, and we've also checked the exhaust. Let's have a look at the bike again, see if we can get it to fire up. So as I said earlier, now we've completed our checks, let's see if we can get the bike to switch on. There is just one more thing to point out though. Operator error. What if, horror of horrors, you wasn't quite in the mental state to ride? You may have forgotten something really simple. Perhaps your bike requires you to pull the clutch in. So then, electrics on. This time I can hear that the electrics are doing their function checks, and I've also remembered the kill switch switched on. Clutch in, you don't need to on this bike, but I'm doing it anyway. And let's start the bike. And there we go, bike started first time. That's not to say that this will be the case for you. If you do manage to get your bike started, don't be tempted to get on the throttle and start revving the bollocks out of it. Take it steady, monitor your bike. If you don't need to go out, don't go out. Make sure your fluids are topped up, make sure you're running everything right, fine, and then take it out on a steady ride before you start opening up the throttle. Anyway, I hope this video was of some use to someone. It's mainly targeted at riders who may have just started out riding, or riders who've pretty much ripped their hair out and wondered why the bike isn't starting. Let's keep it simple and do those following checks, and we should be in a better place moving forward. If it's anything more than that, if it's a more up-to-date and modern bike, some of those need to be plugged in, and that's well beyond my expertise. I'm just an amateur tinkerer, I think is the best description. Anyway, like I said, please subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to build a good community here, so your views and your subscriptions would really help me out. Also, I've just printed off some stickers, so if I do get to 1,000 subscribers, guess what? Each and every one of those subscribers will get a sticker. There'll be other merchandise, I'm sure, but that's all to come. Like and make a comment in the video. If there's something I've left out, then please let me know. These are just things that I've come across myself throughout my riding career, and there are simple things that any one of us can check. Anyway, take care. See you soon.